The new skyline of London on a fine November morning, its ever-changing sight of new towers challenging the old each year. The familiar landmarks fighting to keep their place. Palace of Westminster in the centre there, gleaming in the sunshine, Westminster Abbey on the left, Parliament Square, and beyond Whitehall, where a royal palace once stood, and in the middle of the street, the stark Portland stone of the cenotaph, that memorial built to commemorate more than 1 million British and Commonwealth servicemen killed in the First World War. A war which optimists believed would lead to years of peace. Vain hope. The cenotaph now stands also for the sacrifices made in the 1939 war and for the dead, of course, in all the wars that have followed it. This is the centre of the nation's remembrance today, the nearest Sunday to November the 11th, the day in 1918 when the armistice agreement was signed between Germany and the Allies, an agreement that meant that fighting stopped and no gun was fired after 11 o'clock that day. And that's the origin of the 2 minutes of silence that's going to be observed here this morning, and of course not just here, but at war memorials and at places of worship throughout the country and abroad. The brutal figures of the numbers killed in the 2 world wars are shocking. This year has seen commemorated the Battle of the Somme, the attempt by the Allies after 2 years of fighting to breach German defences, a battle which lasted over 4 months with over 125,000 Allied deaths. And on both sides, the deaths and casualties on the Somme amounted to over 1 million. On the first day of the battle alone, nearly 20,000 British soldiers died, 1 in 5 of those who clambered out of their trenches to charge the German lines. In all these wars, the pain is measured not just in the numbers of the dead, but in all those who are severely wounded, and in the pain of families and friends whose lives are torn apart. For the past half-century, Britain's wars have been different, fought by professionals, men and women who've chosen a career in the services, whose grief is less easily shared, perhaps even less easily understood by a country whose citizens aren't directly involved, who only know about war at second hand as they go about their daily business in peace. Today, so, we have a moment to remember these men and women and their families too, and the sacrifice they've made. Each side of the cenotaph will be guarded this morning by the old infantry fighting formation of the hollow square, bands at one end and on 2 sides representatives of the services. We met 3 of those who are going to be here at the cenotaph today to find out what impact being here would have on them.
I think it's a real honour to have been selected to take part in Remembrance Sunday. Granted, it will be a very emotional day, as it's an opportunity to remember those that you've served alongside, that have been lost.
I'm so privileged and so proud to be celebrating this day, and I've been doing this for the last 22 years.
It's an amazing feeling to be taking part in Remembrance Sunday, because it enables us not just to think about who has passed, but also what they have given. Ever since I was young, I've always wanted to join up into the military. I joined the Navy last October, and I chose it so that I could go travelling around the world.
I have a lot of serving family members who've had very successful careers. I'm very proud of all of them, so I saw it as a privilege to follow in their footsteps and serve my country.
It was my dream since I was young, and I made it, and I'm proud of it.
My first operational tour was in Afghanistan at Camp Bastion. It's what I signed up for, and so never as my job felt like it had more of a purpose than when I was serving out in that environment.
I have served to Bosnia once, Sierra Leone twice, and in Afghanistan 4 times so far. Many of my friends and younger soldiers, those who have worked with me and shared very difficult time with me, have lost their life. But as a soldier, I have to keep going, despite of everything. But there will be a time when you really miss them, and you'll really be emotional.
In 2012, my friend Brent McCarthy was killed out in Afghanistan. When I received the news, it was a real shock. You don't expect it to be somebody that you know. You don't expect it to be somebody that young, and you don't expect it to be someone who was such a good person.
My great-great-uncle Jack Cornwall died 100 years ago during the Battle of Jutland. Jack joined up at 15 years old, and he died soon after his 16th birthday. He was the youngest VC winner within the Royal Navy. It makes not just me, but my whole family proud. On Remembrance Sunday, when I'm standing near the cenotaph, I'll be thinking of my great-great-uncle Jack. I'll also be thinking of the millions of people who have given their lives during the World Wars and other wars since.
I'll be remembering my grandfather, who joined the army and never came back home. As well as I remember my close mate, Colonel Sergeant Kishnadura, who I lost in Afghanistan, as well as all member armed forces who have sacrificed their life.
I will be thinking about Brent. I'll be thinking of his family and his friends and all of those who have served, that have given me and my country and my family the freedom and the opportunities that we are able to have today because of them.
Just 3 of those who are going to be here on parade today. Corporal Cassandra Beach of the Royal Air Force, Captain Nawal Yaka of the Royal Gurkha Rifles, and able seaman Alex Seridis of the Royal Navy there, serving in HMS Iron Duke, Type 23 frigate. And Cassandra Beach, who we were hearing from, now a mother, is going to be returning to Afghanistan, she says, in 2018. So here on Cenotaph, the hollow square is gradually taking shape. The Blues and Royals of the Household Cavalry there, dismounted with their swords. And beside them, they incidentally being the 2 senior regiments of the British Army, the King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery, who fire the salute at the beginning and the end of the 2-minute silence. 90,000 of their gunners fought at the Somme. And then the 1st Battalion Coldstream Guards, who are remembering this year many battle honours, including the first Gulf War a quarter of a century ago. The Royal Marines on the opposite side. This is all arranged in seniority. The Royal Navy taking pride of place, as always. And the Royal Navy are under the command, on the left there, of Lieutenant Commander Sarah Bligh. She's a descendant of the famous William Bligh, captain of HMS Bounty, whose crew, of course, mutinied against him. Commander Bligh. The bands have been playing since, half an hour or so ago for the crowds that have had to come here much earlier. You have to be here by 8 o'clock this morning if you're going to find a good place behind these barricades, standing 10 deep. And there's been cheering music played. Of course, it changes later to more solemn music as we get closer to the beginning of the ceremony itself. So behind Whitehall on Horse Guards, thousands of veterans have been gathering, preparing to move off through Horse Guards Arch here. And for many of these people, they've had a whole weekend of commemoration, not just today, but last night's Festival of Remembrance at the Albert Hall, many informal gatherings in clubs and pubs around London, and they will take their place in these 7 columns that stretch up past the memorial to the women of war towards Trafalgar Square to the right there. After the 2-minute silence at 11 o'clock, the wreath laying by the Queen, the politicians, the service chiefs, it'll be their turn to march down the cenotaph and to lay their wreaths. And many of them have been coming back year after year after year to share memories with old comrades. The kind of memories they often keep to themselves, except perhaps on a day like this. Let's join Sophie Rayworth.
It is always incredibly humbling to be standing here in the middle of Whitehall, and very emotional as well. It is going to be particularly emotional today for these 2 gentlemen, former Corporal Simon Brown and Warren Ward. Simon, you were terribly injured in Iraq. You're very lucky to be here. You were shot in the head 10 years ago.
That's correct, ma'am. Yeah, back in December 2006, I was a commander of a recovery team in Iraq, and we were tasked to recover a vehicle under heavy fire with 6 crew on board. Fortunately, we got everybody out, but as we left the combat zone, I was shot in the face. The bullet went in here, came out here. As you can imagine, made a bit of a mess. Fortunately, not knocked out. I was able to do first aid myself for 25 minutes. So my colleague here got me to Basra Palace, and I woke up 25 days later, on Christmas Eve, to find out that I'd lost my sight, and the world was going to be very different for me.
Your colleague here, Warren Ward, you credit him as one of the people who saved your life.
Yes, ma'am, definitely. I was very fortunate he was there on the day, and how sort of calm and sort of sensible he was to get me out of there.
And Warren, just a few months later, you yourself were caught up in a mortar attack, and you sustained terrible injuries.
Yeah, I had injuries towards my spinal cord, spinal cord, 2 punctured lungs, right broken humerus. Got told never walk again, never use my hands, and here I am today. And you
were paralysed from the neck down for a good 2 years.
18 months to 2 years I was paralysed.
Today, because of Blind Veterans UK, they've brought you together. You're going to be marching together past the cenotaph for the first time. What does that mean to you?
Well, it's the first time we're together in 10 years marching, and I mean, who'd have thought both of us would make it, let alone together. Incredibly proud, obviously, to represent everyone we do, but to do it with this man, you know, somebody who was with me in combat and with me in recovery. Very emotional, very proud.
It will be an emotional moment for you as well, won't it?
Yeah, it's my first time, and as Simon says, it's a very emotional time for me as well, and just with Simon and Blind Veterans for giving me the opportunity to do so. I'm very fortunate, really.
And what is it that brings you back year after year? Because you have kept coming, haven't you?
I'm very fortunate. I mean, with Blind Veterans, I get the opportunity to march with a colleague or a former veteran, you know, a friend. But when you march out those gates into all these wonderful people here that support us, the tens of thousands that line the street, it just makes you proud to be British. And the day that the hairs on my neck don't stand up walking out that gate is the last time I'll do it.
And incredible public support as always. They've been queuing for a long time to make sure that they can get their spaces here on Whitehall.
They're just amazing, the British people, and like I say, they applaud all the veterans walking up, they applaud us on the way around, and it's just, you know, there are tens, maybe, you know, 50,000 people here, and when that cannon goes, the silence is just amazing.
Who will you be thinking of as you pass the cenotaph this morning?
I'll be thinking of friends of past who have lost, and just basically to remember the day as all veterans, all past soldiers.
I'll obviously the brotherhood of the military, but you know, there's a special name in my mind, which is Garrett, and a close colleague that I lost, and yeah, so the puppies to us have names.
Well, I'm going to think of you two as well, because what a moment for both of you. Thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you, Mel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
What an extraordinary story of fortitude, courage. Just one example of many that we'll be hearing today from the people waiting to march past the cenotaph. The Gurkhas On the left there, on parade, on this hollow square, next to them the Royal Logistics Corps. It's the largest corps in the army. It has 26 different Commonwealth countries represented in it, provides all the backup needed for people to go to war. And the civilian services, police, fire, NHS ambulance, prison service, the Red Cross, St John ambulance there, taking their place. And the Royal Air Force, representing the helicopters, radar fighters, ground fighting, navigators. So in a moment we'll have the music of remembrance played by the mass bands. Colonel Kevin Roberts with Rule Britannia. Stirring start, and now the mass bands play Heart of Oak. Next, the minstrel boy. The minstrel boy to the war has gone. In the ranks of death, you'll find him. This Remembrance Sunday brings together all the different elements of a nation at war, on the home front, in the air, in the jungles, the deserts, and at sea. And memories that aren't just commemorated here today, but at different times throughout the year and in different parts of the world. Just to take one example, it's the 75th anniversary of the Arctic convoys. And the Princess Royal was representing the Queen when survivors of those convoys were welcomed back to Archangel in August. Men who remembered sailing through remorseless gales and ice and snow under attack from U-boats and from the air to bring vital supplies to our Russian allies. And now, Men of Harlech. Now it's the turn of the pipes and drums of the Black Watch as the senior drum major, Scott Fitzgerald, stands the mass bands at ease. And we hear the skyboat song, speed, bonny boat, like a bird on the wing, carry the lad that's been born to be king, honoured Prince Charlie escaping to Skye after the Battle of Culloden in 1745. Now the bands play Isle of Beauty, David of the White Rock, and Oft in the Stilly Night. This is haunting music, poignant for those who not just this morning, but every morning, remember their loss.
My husband Ian was killed on the 5th of November 2013. I don't know how you deal with it. I don't think you do for a while. You're in shock, disbelief, and then over time you think about it. And then you have to accept that it is true. Some days you can barely get off the settee, and other days you're happy and you're okay. I think about when the kids are getting older, what he will miss out on. Just little things like I wish you could watch them play football. I wish you could help them with their homework sometimes, or help them with the reading. You're mourning the life that you're not going to have anymore, in a way. There are all those things that we would have done, the four of us. I do miss them, even though it's not going to happen.
Martin, my twin brother, was injured on the 21st of February 2010. He had dreadful injuries, and to have survived those, to manage to get back to Birmingham was a miracle in its own right. He always promised he'd come back to us, and he held up his promise. To spend those days with Martin before he died were very precious moments. It's something which you never want to see your parents go through. It shattered them. I'd say it aged them. It aged us all. I miss just being able to speak to him, to ask his opinion on things. I missed him being at my wedding. I would have loved to have him been there. Despite losing Martin, I use his memory as an inspiration and as encouragement for me to better myself. I remember Martin every day, but I do get encouraged by the fact that at this time of year, the whole nation remembers.
Eleanor was killed on the 5th of April 2007. She was an army medic and she was 19. You can't cope with it. You don't want to hear it. It's not real. It's been nearly 10 years now since I lost Eleanor. Time does not heal. All it does is give you a chance to adjust to the loss of a future, the loss of a daughter getting married, loss of grandchildren. But I have to be strong, and I have to cherish the 19 years I had with her. I just miss her loads.
very personal experiences of loss shared with us by Emma Fisher and David Driver and Emma Fisher. And I should have added there Sally Veck. And now the pipes and drums play Flowers of the Forest. The flowers of the forest all withered away. The pride of our land lies cold in the clay.
Husband! Husband! Chant!
The mass bands will now play from Elgar's Enigma Variations, Nimrod the Hunter. mood has been set with this traditional music, the same year after year. The bands now play Purcell's When I Am Laid in Earth. Remember me, but forget my fate, as we await the arrival on Whitehall of the clergy. Cross-bearer Jason King, the children and gentlemen of the Chapel Royal, the sergeant of the vestry, the forces chaplain, the sub-dean of the Chapel Royal, and at the end of the procession, the Bishop of London, Richard Charters. Next out onto Whitehall, the Major General commanding the Household Division saluting as he passes the cenotaph with his Chief of Staff and aide-de-camp, Major General Benjamin Bathurst, there in operational and ceremonial support for the Crown, the Household Cavalry and the 5 regiments of Foot Guards. And then the group of politicians led by the Prime Minister, Theresa May, the Leader of the Opposition, on her right, Jeremy Corbyn, Leader of the Scottish National Party, Angus Robertson, Tim Farron of the Liberal Democrats, and the other politicians, including in the second rank, 4 former Prime Ministers we're expecting to be here this morning, John Major and Tony Blair and Gordon Brown and David Cameron. Chiefs of Staff, Air Chief Marshal Sir Stuart Peach, the First Sea Lord Admiral Sir Philip Jones, the Chief of the General Staff, the Army that is, General Sir Nicholas Carter, the Chief of the Air Staff, Air Chief Marshal Sir Stephen Hillier, and representatives of the Merchant Navy and fishing fleets, the Irish Ambassador there, the Air Transport Auxiliary Association, Chief Fire and Rescue Services, and the 45 commissioners and others representing the Commonwealth who take up their place on 3 sides of the cenotaph to lay wreaths later. And they're followed by religious denominations, 7 Christian denominations, Roman Catholic, the Salvation Army, the Free Churches, the Methodists, United Reformed Church, and the Greek Orthodox Church. And along with the Christian denominations, the Jewish, Islamic, Hindu, Sikh and Buddhist faiths are represented. down on Whitehall from the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, on the balcony, the Duchess of Cornwall, Duchess of Cambridge on the left, Countess of Wessex on the right. The newly elected Mayor of London here, in the place that Boris Johnson was standing last year. Boris Johnson here today representing the Foreign Office as Foreign Secretary with the special wreath provided by Kew Gardens. On his right, the Democratic Unionist Party leader, Nigel Dodds. On his left, rather, the Speaker of the House of Commons on the right of your picture, and on the left, John Bercow. Now we are waiting for the Queen to lead out the other members of the royal family who will be standing in front of the cenotaph. Everything is in place, the guard is brought to attention. And there's a pause while we wait for Her Majesty the Queen to come out with the Duke of Edinburgh, Prince of Wales, the Duke of Cambridge, Prince Henry of Wales, the Duke of York, the Earl of Wessex, Princess Royal, and the Duke of Kent. Each will be accompanied by their equerry, who will give them the wreaths that they will place at the foot of the cenotaph after the 2 minutes silence at 11 o'clock, which is now just 1 minute away. After the Queen, the Duke of Edinburgh is handed his wreath to lay, and he'll be followed by the Prince of Wales. And now, in a group of three, the Duke of Cambridge, Prince Henry of Wales, and the Duke of York. All three of them have seen military service. Following them, the Earl of Wessex, the Princess Royal, and the Duke of Kent, who is President of the War Graves Commission, lay their wreaths. The parade now stands at ease before the politicians lay their wreaths. The first wreath is laid by Theresa May, Prime Minister. She is followed by Jeremy Corbyn, Leader of the Opposition. Angus Robertson, Leader of the Scottish National Party in the Westminster Parliament, who lays a wreath on behalf of Plaid Cymru. It's inscribed in English and Welsh and Gaelic. Now Tim Farron, Leader of the Liberal Democrats. Nigel Dodds, Leader of the Democratic Unionist Party at Westminster. Following him, on behalf of the Overseas Territories, the Secretary of State for Foreign and Commonwealth Affairs, Boris Johnson, with a wreath of tussock grass and slipper spurge and Old Father Live Forever, among the many flowers put together by Kew Gardens to make this wreath for the Overseas Territories. now the High Commissioners lay their wreaths. The older members of the Commonwealth first: Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, India and Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Ghana and Malaysia. These large Commonwealth countries that played a vital part in both world wars. 5 million, yes, 5 million troops from what was then mostly the Empire fought in the First World War. From Australia, for instance, 400,000 troops signed up out of a population of only about 5 million. From India, nearly 1.5 million signed up. The next group: Nigeria and Cyprus and Sierra Leone, Tanzania, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Uganda, Kenya and Malawi. Again, thousands of troops from East Africa joining the King's African Rifles, which grew as the First World War continued, and another 10,000 who joined from Jamaica. There was a recruitment poster for World War I to get people from these countries to come and fight, showing a lion on a rock surrounded by young lions, calling on the overseas states to answer the call with the slogan, "Helped by the young lions, the old lion defies his foes." And now Malta, the George Cross Island, awarded for gallantry, for resisting constant German bombardment when it was the center of Allied operations in the Mediterranean in World War II. Singapore, overrun by the Japanese. Zambia, Guyana, Botswana, Lesotho, Barbados, Mauritius, and Swaziland. And after them, Tonga and Fiji and Bangladesh, and the Bahamas. Again, there was recruiting in the Bahamas in the First World War to try and persuade people to sign up. That poster said, "The boys are doing splendidly in Egypt and Mesopotamia and France. Roll up, men, make it the best. Another Bahamas contingent will be sailing soon." Also with them, Grenada, Papua New Guinea, Seychelles, the Commonwealth of Dominica, and St. Lucia. They're all here now, but in 1919, none of those from Africa or the West Indies who'd fought in the First World War was invited to London for this celebration. Only those from India. And the last group, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Belize, Antigua and Barbuda, St. Christopher and Nevis, Brunei Dar es Salaam, Namibia, Cameroon, and 2 countries here because they were in the Commonwealth but who played no part in either war, Mozambique and Rwanda. Zimbabwe, however, not here because expelled from the Commonwealth, though of course when it was Southern Rhodesia, many Rhodesians fought nobly both in the ground forces and in the air. After them comes the Irish ambassador, Daniel Mulhall. 200,000 volunteers from the pre-partitioned Ireland fought in the First World War. We were thinking of the Somme earlier. The 16th Irish Division fought there and in 2 days lost 5,000 casualties out of 15,000 fighting. The service chiefs follow. Admiral Sir Philip Jones for the Royal Navy, General Sir Nicholas Carter for the Army, and Air Chief Marshal Sir Stephen Hillier for the Royal Air Force. And lastly, before the service, the Merchant Navy and Fishing Fleets, Ian Mackenzie, the Air Transport Auxiliary Association, Derek Kirkman-Smith, and the Chief Fire and Rescue Advisor, Peter Holland.
O Almighty God, grant, we beseech thee, that we who here do honour to the memory of those who have died in the service of their country and of the Crown may be so inspired by the spirit of their love and fortitude that, forgetting all selfish and unworthy motives, we may live only to thy glory and to the service of mankind, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Teach us, good Lord, to serve thee as thou deservest, to give and not to count the cost, to fight and not to heed the wounds, to toil and not to seek for rest, to labour and not to ask for any reward save that of knowing that we do thy will, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Our Father, which art in heaven,
hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done,
in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive them that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Unto God's gracious mercy and protection we commit you. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up the light of his countenance upon you and give you his peace this day and always. Amen.
Break! Hooray! Jump!
The royal party leave Whitehall to be followed by the clergy. As space is made for the march past, which is preceded by the laying of wreaths by the Royal British Legion. The clergy now leave. The Bishop of London, who retires early next year, having been bishop for 20 years and been at this service for all that time, that's the last time we shall hear his distinctive voice taking the service. And the scarlet and gold state coats of the choir boys of the Chapel Royal, dating back to the Restoration, a choir which actually dates back, they say, to the Norman Conquest, and used to travel with the court wherever the court went. And they'll be followed by the politicians. Exceptionally, we have 4 former prime ministers here today, along with members of Theresa May's new government. Liam Fox is there, and Chris Grayling. Amber Rudd, Secretary of State for Home Affairs, and Elizabeth Truss, Speaker of the House of Commons, John Bercow. So she goes out accompanied by the Leader of the Opposition, Jeremy Corbyn. And so, as they go through into Whitehall, Boris Johnson there on the left, walking with Nigel Dodds, we rejoin Sophie Rayworth.
I'm joined here by Lance Sergeant Johnson Bahari, who in 2005 became the first living recipient of the Victoria Cross for more than 30 years. And this is your first time taking part in the March Past?
Yes, it's my first time taking part in the March Past, and I'm here today with the Chelsea pensioners.
What does it mean to you to be here?
For me, it's a great honor to be here. Most of all, to remember those that didn't make it, but to recognize those that actually lived their life down to give us a platform we're actually sitting on today.
You were awarded the Victoria Cross for incredible bravery. You risked your life not once but twice in Iraq, saving fellow soldiers from ambushes, and you were terribly injured, weren't you, in the second attack?
Yes, I was. I mean, if I could reflect back, today is the right day too. And yeah, I had to make a decision on both incident, I like to say, where you have to be save one life and save the platoon, or lose one life and save the rest. So I decide, right, the best thing to do is lose one life. I go forward to clear the routes so that the platoon could carry on with the duty.
So you risked your life, and you were, as I say, terribly badly injured, but you were awarded the Victoria Cross, and you were wearing the Victoria Cross, which is a really special day for you, because even though you've got a replica, this is the real thing, and you very rarely wear it, do you? It's locked away in Buckingham Palace most of the time.
Well, I mean, it couldn't be in a safer place, but for me, it's a great pride, and to be here today wearing the Victoria Cross, and we could go into the history, how far back you go with the institution of the Victoria Cross. But today I wear it with pride, knowing that it represents 42 lives that I contribute towards, and you know, everyone is happy home with their family.
Incredible what you did. When you march past the cenotaph shortly, who will you be thinking of? What will you be thinking of?
Well, I know for sure I'll be thinking about people like Harry Patch and the rest, because I have met Harry Patch.
You came here to the cenotaph with him in 2008, didn't you, to lay a wreath?
That's right, and that moment would never leave me for the rest of my life. Because when he met me, he said to me, I can't believe that I'm standing in front of you. And I said to him, no, sir, you get it wrong. It's the opposite way. If it wasn't for you, I would not have been here today.
Harry Patch, who was then one of the last surviving members who had taken part in World War I. Thank you very much for talking to us.
My pleasure.
President of the Royal British Legion, Air Marshal David Walker, will lay a wreath now on behalf of the Royal British Legion. He was appointed this year. He served 34 years in the Royal Air Force. He was Deputy Commander of NATO Joint Forces Command. The Royal British Legion organises the march past here at Cenotaph, and of course organises also the Poppy Appeal, which they hope will raise over £40 million this year. It helps fund 2,500 British Legion branches throughout the country and 6 care homes, and gives advice to people who've been in the services who need help with claiming their benefits or social security or other assistance. And so after the President, other officers of the Royal British Legion marched down to the Cenotaph to lay their wreaths too. There's Martin Keegan, representing transport. Air Commodore Richard Corney, President of the Northern Area, representing the Royal Air Forces Association. Vice Admiral John McNally is the Chairman of the Royal Naval Association. Patrick Mitford Slade, the Commonwealth Ex-Services League. Charlie Brown, the National Chairman of the Royal British Legion in Scotland. And at the back of the line there, Marilyn Humphrey, who's the National Chairman of the Royal British Legion Women's Section. So now the scene changes here from the official ceremony of remembrance to the march past arranged by the Royal British Legion, when thousands of ex-servicemen and women will come down to the cenotaph and lay their own wreaths until the whole cenotaph is surrounded with poppies. Thousands of veterans come to pay their annual tribute to dead friends and colleagues. There are people who served together and fought together and survived, and who today remember those who didn't come back.
It's going to be a lot marching past the cenotaph. It's going to be quite a big honour and quite emotional as well.
This year marks the 25th Remembrance Day after the end of the Gulf War. So as we march up Whitehall this year, uppermost in our minds will be those friends and colleagues that we lost.
I'm going to say my prayers and things for the past. Maybe I won't get there again.
There's just that feeling that you are out there with kindred spirits. I wouldn't miss it for the world.
The bombing was atrocious. I just stood there with tears running down my eyes because there was nothing there. No home, just bodies. That's when I decided at just gone 17 years old that I would try to do something. And 3 weeks later, I had my papers. I was shifted to a place called The Keep in the barracks with barbed wire around it. and I waved to the regiment. You see them, you say, cheerio, Bert, cheerio, Charlie, or whatever. They're about 23, just over, and things like that. They're all marching out the gate, cavalry barracks. And that's the last you see of them. You won't see them anymore.
I joined the Navy when I was 15 and a half. The Navy sounded the greatest thing because you sailed the world. I heard about the Falklands when I was on board HMS Coventry. It was pretty obvious that we were going to be deployed to the South Atlantic. There was no fear. We'd had a fairly successful day. We'd taken out 2 aircraft attacks. All of a sudden, the action alarms went off. You heard 2 hollow thuds, and then all of a sudden, one of the bombs exploded. I realised very quickly that there was nothing left of the operations room. In about 5 minutes, she was well over. I jumped over the starboard side. I consider myself to be a lucky man. Sadly, we lost 19 on that day.
Flying a fast jet just seemed like a great idea to me, and that's all I ever wanted to do when I was growing up and going through school. In August 1990, we were told to deploy as a response to Saddam Hussein's invasion into Kuwait. I was tasked at a mission against Al Talil airfield. And as we approached the airfield, then I just saw a missile coming straight up towards us. Came to on the desert floor. I was spotted by a couple of soldiers. You know, that was a real sort of fearful moment in terms of, no, I am captured. No, I do have to face what's going to happen next. The interrogations and the beatings didn't happen every day, but the mental endurance and the mental side of that then started to become very, very difficult. Eventually, an Iraqi official came into my cell and he said, "Mr. David, the war is over. We can be friends now. You're going home."
I joined the army because I wanted to do my bit. Why rely on somebody else when it's also your duty to actually go out and fight as well? 2009 was the worst time the British Army had had for many a year. On the tour I was on, I think it's worked out as every 4 days there was someone dying, which is just absolutely horrific. I was injured in an IED blast. I remember getting thrown through the air and landing on the ground and looking through my hand where my finger used to be, thinking it's going to be a pretty bad day. And then I realised what actually happened, and then knew it was going to be a really bad day after that. I do remember waking up back in Selly Oak in Birmingham. I remember my dad saying, "Look son, you've got no legs. Move on for it." I consider myself really lucky to survive, and I have no doubt that it could have been hundreds of more men and women killed out in Afghanistan had it not been for the medical staff.
This year I will be going past the cenotaph, so I'll be thinking of my husband whom I married during the war. The mass bands remind me very much of him.
I will be thinking of the people we sadly lost on HMS Coventry and those that have crossed the bar since.
Uppermost in our minds will be those friends and colleagues that we lost during the Gulf conflict. We made a promise to them that we will remember them, and we are remembering them as we do that.
I think I sort of owe it to their families to be there, walking past.
Well, they're all here in Whitehall waiting to take part in the march past, to pass the cenotaph in a very short time. I'm also joined here by former Corporal Monty Morell, who is taking part today. You've been here many times, haven't you?
Many, many times. I believe this is my 13th year.
And you're representing the Suez veterans.
Suez veterans, yes, I am, yes.
How important is it for you to come back year after year?
It's very important to me to remember those that we left behind, and it's something I've always wanted to do, and I will carry on doing it until I can't do it no more.
And you're very passionate about doing it.
I am very much so.
You have said in the past, I mean, the Suez veterans feel or have felt like the forgotten army.
We have, like, we never seem to get the attention we deserve. I mean, we lost 609 men in the Suez, and, you know, we was the forgotten army, but we are getting a bit of attention at the moment, which we're very pleased about.
When you pass the cenotaph, who is it that you think about in particular?
Well, there's two people, actually. There's a very good friend, Tommy Weston, and a very good friend, Ernie Dolman, who passed away here.
Tell me about the camaraderie that goes on here, because I think you only really feel it when you're standing right here in the middle of it, and it is an extraordinary atmosphere, isn't it?
Well, the camaraderie in the services is second to none. I mean, I've shook hands with so many veterans today, that people I don't know at all, like, you know, and if we see each other in the street and we're wearing blazers, and we always shake hands and say hello to each other, and in the civilian street you don't get that. So it is second to none.
And today is, of course, an incredibly solemn occasion, but there is an incredible warmth about it as well, and a humour as well.
Oh, much humour, yeah, like laughing and joking, and talking about old memories that we've had all together, like, you know, and it's wonderful.
You're going to take your place very shortly for the march past.
I am, yeah.
Describe what it is like being part of this mass of people, more than 8,500.
Well, it's hard to describe. I mean, I don't know, you're just proud to be here. You are so proud to be here, like, you know, and I just hope that I can do it for many more years. We'll wait and see.
It's very humbling as well, isn't it?
Oh yes, without a doubt, 100%. Yeah.
Monty Morell, thank you very much for talking to us this morning.
There was one other point I'd like to bring up. I'm thinking of in 1956, Bod's coming home from Egypt. Came home on a Avro York aeroplane. There was 60 personnel on there. Most of them, all of them RAF except one army chap who was coming home on compassionate leave. And they landed in Malta to refuel, and on takeoff it crashed and they was all killed.
I'm
and
sure
I was still sorry for them.
I'm sure you will be thinking of them in a short time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
So the march past has begun, the band leading the 1st Battalion Light Infantry Association, who have the privilege of being the first of many thousands of people who march past the cenotaph. All of them, as he was saying a moment ago, looking after each other with a kind of camaraderie today, as they did in the battlefield. The Battalion Light Infantry Association, and they're followed by the Royal Green Jackets. And after them, the Gordon Highlanders Association here, their distinctive Glengarry bonnets with the red and white dicing, and huge cap bands. Among them, the oldest, longest serving soldier on parade today, who joined the Argylls in 1954 and served for 24 years. Gordon Highlanders, hear them, eyes left as they pass the cenotaph, and then hand their wreaths to the wreath layers who'll take them and place them on the steps.
Eyes left.
The Parachute Regiment. Served in the Falklands and Northern Ireland, Balkans, the Gulf Wars. Their distinctive berets. Parachute, and the Guards Parachute Association is there as well, the Guards Parachute Battalion, which was formed and then reformed as an independent parachute company after World War II. the music will be very familiar to them and is probably familiar to you. It's a long way to Tipperary. The Rifles Regimental Association there, preceded by the Staffordshire Regiment. Emma Fisher is there, who was in our film earlier on talking about loss. You see her there on the right of the screen with the large red poppy. Emma Fisher, the wife of Warrant Officer Ian Fisher, who was killed in Afghanistan in November 2013. What an extraordinary moment for her, as it is for everybody who marches this morning. The Regimental Association of the Royal Irish Regiment. We're just able, as they go through, many of them quite small contingents, 9 strong, 5 strong, 10 strong, to identify those we can. We can't, of course, pick everybody out. It would be like race reading. The British Limbless Ex-Servicemen's Association, BLESMA, which offers counselling and caring to people who've lost limbs. They're preceded by the Royal Hussars, the Coldstream Guards Association and the Irish Regiments Association. The Royal Hospital, Chelsea, follows the British Limbless Ex-Servicemen's Association. Johnson Bahari there pushing the wheelchair of one of the Chelsea pensioners who we had from a moment ago, Bill Speakman, with the Victoria Cross. So one Victoria Cross recipient from the Korean War being pushed by another Victoria Cross recipient. What an extraordinary sight. Mary Johnson, who was also in our film talking about her husband and saying these bands would be the thing that most brought back to her her military service. She lives in the Royal Hospital, Chelsea, along with other veterans. Now the Women's Royal Army Corps Association. And they laid 2 wreaths here today. They lay a second one on behalf of the Land Army and the Timber Corps. 3 of the people marching served in the Second World War. 250,000 women in all, in fact, served in the Ats in World War II, until it was finally disbanded. Well, the RAC was disbanded in 1992 because women now, as in the Royal Navy, join the services in their own right and don't have a special division. They're followed by the Reconnaissance Corps, just a small number, but people who served in D-Day at Caen and at Arnhem. Inky Pinky Parlez-vous, you'll recognise that one too, no doubt. The Royal Horse Artillery Association, and here the association had more than 1 million men and women serving in the Royal Artillery. They celebrated their 300th anniversary this year. 62 gunners have been awarded the Victoria Cross. Behind them, the Royal Engineers, REME, Royal Engineers Association, not REME, they're the Royal Engineer Mechanical, no, just the Royal Engineers. The famous Royal Engineers who serve everywhere, the sappers, with their wonderful motto, ubique, meaning everywhere. They're found everywhere because they go to support. Particularly doing the dangerous job of digging trenches towards enemy fortifications in the war so that mines can be laid. The Royal Engineers Bomb Disposal Association is there, the Royal Signals Association. Here the Army Air Corps in their light blue berets. Responsible for managing their own aircraft. They were established as a flying school in the First World War. The Army Catering Corps. The Army marches on its stomach, as we all know, and these were experts in catering and training cooks, formed in the Second World War. Before then, each regiment had its own cook. Leading them is Gordon Wilkinson, a colonel who joined the army as a boy soldier at the age of just 15. And carrying the wreath, the National Serviceman, Ron Drew. We haven't heard much about the National Serviceman. Age 18, thousands who joined up after the Second World War. Behind them, the Royal Pioneer Corps. His job was a rather dangerous job of armed labour, as it was called. And they were given the title Royal at the end of the Second World War. Behind them, the Royal Army Medical Corps. They've just come back from armistice commemorations on the Somme. We're watching out for the bright red berets of the Royal Military Police Association. They're former military police, Royal Military Police, serving in national service, regular the Territorial Army. Behind them, the Royal Army Physical Training Corps there. They march behind the Pay Corps, as vital as the cooks for keeping the army going, and the Veterinary Corps and Dental Corps. Prince of Wales, with Michael Fallon, the Defence Secretary, on his right, who's taking the salute of those who've marched past the cenotaph and then will go on round the bottom and up to Horse Guards. So everybody will come this way after they've been past the cenotaph. Royal Air Forces Association now, marching off. This is the third of the 7 columns. A 100 years old veteran in the wheelchair. And the Royal Air Force, their association, the RAF Regiment Association, follow them, the army of the Royal Air Force that provides defence of airfields. The Royal Air Force Ex-Prisoners of War Association. 10,000 airmen, Dave Waddington there, who we heard on the left of your screen, who we heard in our film, talking about his experience of torture and then being freed in Iraq. Bomber Command had 10,000 airmen imprisoned in Germany. It's rather sobering to think that 10,000 were imprisoned, but 55,000 of Bomber Command were killed. They're led today by Air Commodore Charles Clark, who was shot down himself in 1944 and spent time in Stalag Luft 3 in World War II. They're followed by the Royal Observer Corps and then representatives of National Service Royal Air Force Association. Well, let's just for a moment rejoin Sophie down there on Whitehall.
About to take part in the march past this morning as well, Valerie Pennifer and her daughter Carrie, who are marching with the HMS Neptune Association. You're here to remember your father, aren't you?
Yes, I am. My father was killed on Kandahar, 29, Edmund John Lidbury, and I was born 17 days later. My mother died when I was 4. My grandmother brought me up. And it wasn't until many years later, when I was at a memorial service in Shillington, when a veteran came up to me and said, "What are those medals on your coat?" And I said, "They are my father's." And he said, "Well, you're wearing them on the wrong side." And I said, "Oh dear." And he said, and they need a clean. I thought, well. And he said, "Do you know where your father died?" I said, "No, I didn't really, but I do know his ship was called Kandahar." And he said to me, "You owe it to your father to find out how he died and honour his name." And subsequently, that's what I've been doing by joining the Neptune Association and laying this wreath.
You never knew your father, as you say, your mother died when you were so young as well. This is your second time here. The first time, knowing what you then knew, and you marched past the cenotaph, what was that like?
Well, it was incredibly moving, but as I had an agenda, worked out by the last veteran, I thought to myself as I laid the wreath and I walked past, "This is for you, Dad. I've come a long way." And I still feel the second time in bringing my daughter that, I've done everything that I should have done to honour his name.
You certainly have. And Carrie, this is the first time you have been here. You're wearing your other grandfather's medals. How important is it for you to be here?
I think it's important, and I think it's relevant for younger generation and subsequent generations to keep remembering.
And it is very emotional, isn't it, just standing in the middle of it all?
Extremely, and I think, I've always watched it on television before, and being in the middle of it when there's that silence and all you can hear in the centre of London is people breathing is quite remarkable and very moving.
It is an incredible moment, isn't it? The 2-minute silence, everything. You can hear a pin drop.
Yes, you can hear a pin drop. I mean, it brings home to you what these men have done. And I'm so grateful to that veteran who told me that my medals were dirty and that I should clean them because I have done what he wanted me to do. And I'm sure he's listening.
I'm sure he is. Well, we will let you take your place and you can show him once again what you're doing. Thank you.
The Princess Mary's Royal Air Force Nursing Association going past there, and the Intelligence Corps now played a significant role in breaking the Enigma code. These are principally Royal Air Force Group 656 Squadron Association, which was deployed in the Far East and throughout the Burma campaign provided support for the 14th Army. They're followed by the Airborne Engineers Association. A terrible story. Bill Kelly, who's laying the wreath for the Airborne Engineers Association, his father was captured as a prisoner of war on the 6th of June. In 1944, he was injured and then was shot. Against the rules of war, of course, having been captured. He's here remembering him. The Snowdrops, the Royal Air Force Police Association, in their white service caps, giving them that nickname. Roll out the barrel from the band. The Parachute Regimental Association with their red berets, actually maroon berets, led by General Sir Anthony Rupert Smith, who commanded the 1st Armoured Division during the Gulf War. And the Paras followed by Blind Veterans Association, and there the centre, Simon and Warren, who we saw talking earlier to Sophie Rayworth. The Not Forgotten Association, Harry Fraser's marching there, served in Burma during the Second World War. Here with his son and his grandson, all of whom served. One in the Coldstream Guards, was in Iraq and Afghanistan. You do find this quite often, a father, grandfather, son, all who've done their time in the armed forces. Northern Ireland is well represented. The Ulster Defence Regiment is here, 197 members of the Ulster Defence Regiment lost their lives. They were formed to support the Royal Ulster Constabulary. And there's the Northern Ireland Veterans Association too. And these are the South Atlantic Medal Association. Medal awarded to those who took part in the Falkland Islands liberation in 1982, in which over 250 British servicemen lost their lives. The British Gurkha Welfare Society is here. The Gurkhas, we heard from one of them on parade before. And the Gurkhas who were allowed, given permission, whatever you call it, to live in Britain after their service. And the war widows. There are 25 war widows, which stand just to represent thousands and thousands of people who lost family members, husbands now and wives. They had their own service, the war widows, at the cenotaph yesterday. They lay a special cross-shaped wreath of white chrysanthemums and poppies and rosemary. Canadian Veterans Association, they say this is the last time, sadly, they're coming. Carrying the wreath, a 93-year-old Captain Rolf Monteith from the Royal Canadian Navy. The Canadians played a huge part, of course, not just on the ground, but also in the Battle of the Atlantic in the Second World War. And he's marching in honor of his cousin, who served in Bomber Command, and a brother-in-law who sank in HMS Glorious. Trucial Oman Scouts you'll have seen go through in their red and white shamags. Trucial Oman Scouts, raised in 1951 as the Trucial Oman levies serving in the Gulf states. The Royal Marines Association now, with their green and blue berets, led by Peter Ward, an association set up to keep nearly 100,000 Royal Marines in touch with one another after the war. They are, of course, Britain's commandos. They're all trained to commando level before they get the green beret. Huge wreath with Gibraltar written on it. The Merchant Navy Association, led by Vivian Foster, the association's national president there, carrying the anchor. Followed by the Sea Harrier Association and the Flower Class Corvettes, the Andromeda Association, Argonaut, all these ships who still meet together. Type 42 Association, the Type 42 destroyers. The reef bearer served in HMS Sheffield during the Falklands War. He was very lucky to escape alive. He happened to have just left the place where the shell landed, and everybody else was killed, and he was safe. The Coastal Minesweeper Tongue Class Association, designed in the late 40s, their ships with wooden hulls. Behind them, the Queen Alexandra Royal Naval Nursing Service. You can just see the women there at the back of your screen. Most recently, they've been in Sierra Leone, assisting in the Ebola virus crisis. So we have here an extraordinary range of people from the First World War, people remembering that to right up to the present day. The Royal Naval Medical Branch for ratings and sick berth. On the smaller ships, there are people who may be the only medical help on a ship where they don't have doctors. Sam McFarlane there, the Royal Naval Communications Association, who we also heard earlier on this morning talking about the reasons he was marching here today. He served in Coventry when she was sunk in the Falklands. I remember him talking about how he managed to escape. The Broadsword Association, another ship, helped to rescue 170 of HMS Coventry's crew. And then we have representatives of the Fleet Air Arm in various guises, and here the Neptune Association. It's the 75th anniversary, and this is a very good example of how people come together to be here. HMS Neptune was sunk in 1941 off Tripoli, and Valerie Pennifer and her daughter Carrie Pennifer, who we were talking to a moment ago, medals suitably polished. Now, I was saying these little groups of people who have one event that they hold in their memory, like the HMS Neptune Association, just 15 of them marching. There's the Penelope Association, ship torpedoed in 1944. Now 19 people remain to come here, either families or people who were aboard the ship. Had a very heavy loss of life. But it does reinforce this idea that the Royal Navy, the Royal Air Force, the Army are not one big mass, though of course they fight like that, but are actually made up of these small groups of people with intense loyalty to each other, which is why we hear these extraordinary stories of heroism today, of people who do things nobody would think of doing because it's for their mates, for their comrades, for their friends. That's what's so powerful about this march past. That's why this is not a military ceremony, but a grouping of friends come together to remember. The Gurkha Brigade Association. And the London Scottish Regiment Association, the Territorial Infantry, the 1st Territorial Infantry Battalion, to see action in the First World War on Messines Ridge in October 1914, and the following day nearly half the battalion was killed or missing or wounded. Casino Society and the Queen's Bodyguard of the Yeomen of the Guard. Queen's Bodyguard formed in 1485, the oldest royal bodyguard in the world, just 18 members here. The National Gulf Veterans and Families Association. The wreath bearer, Stella Platanos. You see that very colourful wreath, which they had specially designed, representing red roses for blood, white flowers for peace, and yellow to represent the sands of the desert of the Gulf. The Suez veteran, who we spoke to earlier on, Monty Morell, 80 years old, former corporal. Very special group now, the Special Operations Executive. Sworn to secrecy, the SOE, created by Winston Churchill in 1940. Many were captured, many were executed in concentration camps. 16 of them here. And their role was to encourage resistance behind the line. Incredibly dangerous and daring work. The Italy Star Association, somewhere in there I think there's a 6-year-old William Burton, the great-grandson of Leslie Alder, who served in the Second World War at Monte Cassino. Of course, the famous battle which went on and on and on in Italy to take Monte Cassino and open the way to Rome, and was finally fell to the Polish forces after months in which many people were killed. The Burma Star Association. The Forgotten Army, they call themselves. Well, we heard those who fought at Suez calling themselves Forgotten as well. I think Paul Lambert there, of the Royal Regiment of Scotland, was talking about what it was like to be here. Royal Scots Regimental Association. Royal Scots, the oldest regiment in the British Army, and then merged to form, as did many other Scottish regiments, the Royal Regiment of Scotland. Behind them, ammunition technicians, and then the Burma Star Association. The ones I was saying call themselves the Forgotten Army, are still fighting in Burma after victory in Europe was declared, right up until the end of the war in August 1945. The West Indian Association of Service Personnel, led by Mortimer Hart, who served with the Green Jackets. Just 6 of them on parade. And they're followed by the civilian services, St John Ambulance here. Train people how to save life through their training programs, like the British Red Cross. And among those who march in this civilian line are the ambulance service, retired police officers, the constabulary, the British Red Cross, St Andrew's First Aid, children of the Far East, prisoners of war. There's St Andrew's First Aid, Scotland's only dedicated first aid charity, come down here to march. And they're followed by the Royal Ulster Constabulary George Cross Association, the Ulster Special Constabulary. And there are animal charities here too, the Blue Cross and the PDSA and the RSPCA, and the Shot at Dawn Pardons campaign for those who were granted posthumous pardons in 2006. So as we come towards the end of this march past, let's rejoin Sophie for a moment on Horse Guards.
Yes, I'm here on Horse Guards Parade, and this is where the veterans are now arriving after taking part in the march past. Many of them have been here many times, year after year, but I'm joined here by former Sergeant Mick Press. It was his first time here at the Cenotaph. Lovely to talk to you. A very important, very poignant moment for you to come for the first time. Explain why.
Well, Michael Press was a Royal Marine, born in Bristol in the 1860s. Fought in the Boxer Rebellion and then came home and was killed in Gosport. He had 5 sons that fought in the First World War, all with the Royal Marines, and on this day, 100 years ago to this day, his son Michael Press was killed at the Somme.
So that was your great-great-uncle?
That's correct, yeah, my great-great-uncle. And his brother, John Dennis Lyons Press, he was in the Zeebrugge raid and was nominated for the VC. He was wounded in the First World War. He was wounded in the Second World War as well in Crete, captured by the Germans and sent off to Lambsdorff prisoner of war camp. There were 5 brothers that all fought in the First and some of them in the Second World War. Then you come across to the cousin, which is Sidney Lyons Press from Bedminster in Bristol as well, and he was on HMS Amphion, and with his shipmates they were the first casualties of World War I, when I think the war was 32 hours old.
So as you went past the Cenotaph this morning, presumably they are the people you thought of?
Absolutely, yeah, and also to the sons John and Peter, who will be at the graveside in Gosport today, of their mother who brought them up, and the grandmother who brought them up, and their fathers. Yeah, wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And they were in my first thoughts. Yes.
Well, thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you, sir.
So this is the end of this march past, where we come to the Cadets, Scout Association, Boys Brigade, Girl Guides, Army and Combined Cadet Force Association, and the YMCA and the church lads are here too, and the Girls Brigade, those religious organisations. Friends of Polish Veterans Association here, surprisingly placed among the youth march led by a colonel who served with the British Army in Bosnia. They came, and also people came from the Netherlands, as from Canada and other parts of the world, to be here. British Evacuees Association. They wear cardboard labels. You can see the labels on their lapels. They were among the 3 million children evacuated from the cities during the war to the countryside. And the reason they're here is not just to remember that, but also because many of them came back to the cities to find their homes destroyed and sometimes their parents dead. So they have bitter as well as sweet memories. And at the very back, the Munitions Workers Association. Dangerous work in the Second World War. Many people were killed actually making the shells that would go to the front. the red and white colours of Poland as those veterans go past on their armbands. So as the final part of this long march past disappears up Whitehall, the great garden of poppies in front of the cenotaph, let's rejoin Sophie on Horse Guards.
Well, among those marching today, many veterans who were badly injured in the most recent conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan. One of them is with me now, former Corporal Alan Jackson, and you lost your leg and part of your arm in Afghanistan not very long ago, 5 years ago.
That's it, yeah. On the 5th of February, it was 2011. I stood on ID while unfortunately recovering the body of my company sergeant major, which luckily to me was close to Bastion, so I was in medical care really quickly, which saved my life ultimately.
The frontline medicine that is available now to soldiers like you is incredible, isn't it? But it's been a very long road to recovery for you. Yeah, that's it. It's initial care, saving lives is amongst the best in the world, and it's thereafter that we kind of, as the servicemen, we put our foot down and kind of really try to push hard on getting better, because it's back in our hands again. So we push hard, and it was a long road learning how to walk, getting my head around all the prosthetics and all the care of that. It was long. And your first time today at the cenotaph after your long road to recovery, that must have been an incredibly emotional moment for you, very poignant. Yeah, it was. It certainly was. There's a lot of mixed emotions at the minute, but there's a lot of injured guys. We're here with Blesma, and so we're all the British Luminous ex-servicemen. And so we've all been talking about our experiences, which is good as well. It's been a really quite a poignant and good day. Well, thank you very much for talking to us. Thank you.
Prince of Wales still taking the salute. I see Sophie has somebody else with her down there on Horse Guards. Let's rejoin her. Sophie.
Somebody else who has joined the march past for the first time today is Zoe Brooke, who is marching with the First Aid Nursing Yeomanry, the Fannies. Wonderful story behind this. Why did you join?
I joined because my great-aunt was a member of F-Section SOE in the Second World War. She was a French resistance worker. She came to England and was recruited for the SOE. She did a parachute jump into occupied France. She was captured and executed in the concentration camp. But an unveiling of a plaque to commemorate the recruitment of her to the SOE section, I met the serving Fannies who encouraged me to join, and I'm here today.
She was well known, wasn't she? Madeleine d'Amamont.
That's right, she was very well known, and there's commemorative plaques to her. We've been to quite a few events this weekend commemorating her and her colleagues who gave so much for us.
Incredible work that they did. Her middle name was Zoe, but I presume you were named after her.
That's exactly right. So she was Madeleine Zoe, and I'm Zoe Madeleine in honour of her. So my mum's name is Madeleine, so it's very much an alive story, part of the family. And to be here in the uniform of her, commemorating her and her colleagues, just fantastic.
And it was your first time today because you only passed out as a Fanny in May. That must have been an incredible moment for you, passing the cenotaph, knowing your family history.
It certainly was, and to be marching with women who are active members now, with our veterans as well, it was fantastic, a real important moment. Yeah.
Zoe Brooke, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, it's time now for us to leave this moving ceremony at the cenotaph after another year of commemoration. It was George V who said, after a tour of military cemeteries, 4 years after the end of the First World War, that the massed graves were silent witnesses to the desolation of war. The earth, he said, was girdled with the graves of our dead. This march past the cenotaph, which we've seen this morning, is no less potent a witness. Here people have come who fought, many who were wounded, many who lost family or friends. It's been a reminder of the history of our wars and of the debt of gratitude we owe those who fought them, a debt which can never be repaid, but a reminder also perhaps of the price we all pay when peace breaks down, lest we forget.
Incredible stories of bravery and courage next on BBC One as the people remember.